Hi, and welcome
Hi.
back to the next episode of the Spouting Devil podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in.
I am Natasha. I am a writer, director, producer. In case you're just tuning in. I also work as an assistant director for film and television.
And I'm Seamus, your co-host, and I'm a writer, actor, and director, and I love to just geek out about everything that's film and TV.
Yeah, we love it. We watch a couple hours a week to try to turn it into our own personal film school. But disclaimer, look, we're not professional movie critics, so, you know.
Also, don't take anything that we say as legal advice. We are not attorneys. We're just film and TV nerds.
Exactly. So this week we took a little bit of a break from the screeners.
Yeah, we got into like a comedy kick,
Yeah.
which has been really, really fun. And we saw this great movie called Good Grief by Dan Levi from Schitt's Creek.
And it stars, aside from Dan, Himesh Patel, who was great in that movie Yesterday.
Awesome
that
movie.
we loved. Ruth Negga from Loving and Passing, who's just amazing. And Luke Evans, who was Gaston in the live action of Beauty and the Beast. What'd you think of it?
I thought it was awesome. I also thought it was really well done, and it really captured the different stages of like grief that everybody can go through, and it also had a exciting, fun twist to it. So I won't give that away, but I thought it was really well done.
And just like I also thought that it was well written, and you could tell that the director was also an actor. Because I feel like I can always kind of tell when the director is an actor because they get the actors to just like chill out and really settle into their roles, which is really fun to see. I love that it took place in Europe. I just love watching Europe on camera.
Yeah.
I would say give it a watch.
Absolutely.
It is on Netflix. We've been loving this director series.
Yeah.
We've been talking to some all incredible women as of right now, which has been really fun. And so we're gonna introduce our next guest.
Gabriella A. Moses is an award-winning Dominican-Guyanese-American writer and director based in Brooklyn, New York. She is a graduate of New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, with her firm belief in sharing stories with underrepresented protagonists that test viewers' perceptions of identity and their imaginations. Gabriella has received support from the Sundance Institute's Creative Producing Lab, Tribeca Film Institute's All Access Lab, and Creators Market, IFP, the Gotham, No Borders Film Market, and the Los Cabos Gabriel Figueroa Film Fund programs.
She has participated in numerous workshops, including the Sundance Screenwriters Intensive, the NIWIF From Script to Pre-Production Workshop, Tribeca and Chanel Through Her Lens, AT&T Untold Stories Program, and the annual Blacklist Screeners Lab. She most recently was selected for the inaugural Scripted Cons Screenplay List, LA Lift and Netflix Inclusion Fellowship, and the Blacklist Latinx List. Her screenplay, El Timbre de tu Voz, won Best Drama Screenplay at Fresh Voices Screenplay Competition, including recognition through their Diversity and Inclusion and our Culture and Heritage Spotlight Awards.
Her debut feature, Boca Chica, set in Dominican Republic, premiered in the International Narrative Competition at the 2023 Tribeca Film Festival, where she won the prestigious 11th Annual Nora Ephron Award.
So please welcome Gabriella Moses.
Woo!
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. It's great speaking with you guys today.
Thank
You
you.
look so fancy.
Yeah.
No, thank you. This is me freshening up for our chat, but
That's it.
You're sun-kissed, fresh from the DR.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
just there with family, so that was nice.
Oh, perfect.
And you did a shoot there, Boca Chica, right?
Yes, my first feature we shot in the Dominican Republic, which was very much a homecoming and sort of a spiritual experience, and not at all what I expected in terms of what I had been preparing for my first feature, but it was definitely a gift, and came with the challenges and then also an immense amount of rewards in the end.
Would you mind talking to us about it a little bit more? Like the experience of shooting
Yeah.
there, also the experience of Boca Chica and like the amazing festival run that it had,
Congrats.
and yeah.
Yeah, so we're sort of in the beginning actually of the festival run. We premiered at Tribeca
Right,
No big
right.
last
whoop.
No big
No
June,
big
deal.
which
whoop.
is nice. That was a homecoming, which I said during our time at the festival because I started out my freshman year as a volunteer, and then we did the creators market with this other project that's very much my baby feature film that went through the Sundance Labs and a number of other programs. And that was how Sterling Ramirez, the producer of Boca Chica, ended up finding me.
Oh, wow.
And she was looking to work with a Dominican-American or Dominican filmmaker for this was her second project. And it was a project that she had the idea about a young girl who wanted to be a musician and was growing up on the beaches of Boca Chica, which is about an hour from the capital of Santo Domingo in the DR. And she wanted to tell a story that was about hope, but also the reality of situations that young women find themselves in the Dominican Republic and in the world. We were very like adamant that this is a global story and happens, here in the States as well. There's cases of trafficking and exploitation of young girls, but it's
Hell yeah.
very much
Yeah, there
centered
is.
around this. Yeah, exactly. So it's very much centered around this young girl's journey and the secrets of her family and how do we escape generational cycles. And it was a story that had a lot of truth and themes in it that already existed in my work. It was coming of age, and most of my short films have been from the perspective of children or teenagers up until this point. Las Mañanitas, my thesis film um, during NYU was about a 15-year-old girl who's about to have her quinceañera, and she sees the Virgin Mary and a piece of queso frito. And so that was like coming of age, more playful. And then Leche, which is the feature I was talking about that went through the Sundance Labs, and I went through a few Tribeca programs with. That is the story of a 9-year-old girl. So when Boca Chica came to me and was about a young girl, was in the DR, and the theme of sex tourism actually was in another feature I was developing and had a few drafts called El Timbre de tu Voz, that then I took through another lab. Like it was all these worlds melding. And they were in the like late treatment stages, and I found out the writers attached were Mariana Rondon and Mari de Ugas, who had made this film Pelo Malo that won at San Sebastian when it premiered. And that film had been in my lookbook for about 6 years for Leche because it had to do with colorism and childhood and the Latin American community. And so there were just all these kismet things that came together. And we were coming right out of the pandemic when I got this email from Sterling. We had just been selected with Leche to pitch for Untold Stories.
Oh,
So it's kind of like,
Great.
okay, I've had this project for 7 years in gestation called Leche. It's gone through every lab that I can think of. We don't have the financing. We had like 150K and then shut down and pandemic happened. And it was a really hard project to finance because it starred this young girl and was about Afro-Latinos, and there's still names to attach. And so I was like,
Was that the biggest like pushback? Sorry to stop you there, but
no,
just like,
of course.
was that the biggest pushback? The lead was a kid? Or what do
The
you
biggest,
like,
yeah.
other than just money, but like, like, was there the big, hey, this is sticking out?
Yeah, I think for financing that project, the biggest challenge we've had, and we're still trying to, make this story. It's not something that I was like, okay, I made Boca Chica. I have other stories to tell. Yes, but Leche is still a priority for me. And it has been that there's not a big name that we can attach to it. It is a bit like I've leaned into the fact that it's genre, and that's been now the wave that I've ridden with it. But up until that point, that was quite the challenge, like because we
Yeah.
were going through, private equity and production companies it's like we have two Afro-Latinas that have names that we feel are like of worth, and that was Zoe Saldana and Rosario Dawson, and
Oh my gosh,
you know,
my two
that puts you in
faves.
a certain space. Yeah, and they're dope. And we had the Zaldanas and their company Sinistar come and give us notes, but it was like we kept hitting a wall with that project. And so Untold Stories, which was a great experience, we did it remotely. It was the like I mean, still very much in the pandemic. When we did the pitch in June of that year of 2021. And we didn't get the $1 million, and I had been offered Boca Chica, and I was like, okay, maybe this is the journey I was meant to go on, and this is going to be a challenging but hopefully equally rewarding one. I couldn't imagine a better script to be presented with storytellers and collaborators that I trust, from like Sterling Ramirez, the producer. Her energy and my energy were so aligned. And then from the screenwriters whose past work I really admired, and they were allowing me to give my feedback and, you know, write in scenes and contribute what I wanted to, knowing I was a writer and this was going to be my debut. And so that was really important to me. It was tricky because I had a feature that dealt with similar themes that also I'm still pursuing. But I trusted that it was different enough, that so many things were aligning, and that I shouldn't fear also directing my first feature in Spanish. My mother's Dominican, but I didn't grow up in an incredibly bilingual household. I listened to telenovelas and was around Spanish, but my mother didn't speak it to us a lot. My father's from Guyana, which is an English-speaking country in South America. And so it was something that was always a goal of mine, to become fluent in Spanish and to direct a feature, and the two aligned. And that was Boca Chica. And we wrapped on the like 1-year death anniversary of my abuela, who's like the first one to come to America from that side of the family. So it was an incredibly emotional experience for me, but a beautiful one. And I'm so thankful to be a part of the Dominican film community, and to have had a door open there when there were so many shutting me out here in the States. So yeah.
And I think, well, thank you so much for sharing that part of the ride with us. And I'm also, the last part that you just mentioned about filming in DR, that I'm really excited to hear about, if there's things that you'd like to just share or kind of highlight about what that's like. You know?
Yeah. So the Dominican Republic has a really beautiful tax incentive. There's the Ley de Cine, there's the Dije Cine that exists. That's the film commission in the country that's helmed by some incredible women who are really trying to get Dominican filmmakers and the diaspora. Like, they are so welcoming of Dominicans from outside of, like, that weren't raised there, to tell their stories and collaborate, obviously, with Dominicans that are like honing their craft there, as well as there's a lot of foreign productions coming into the DR. Pinewood has their tank and their own studio there, and then Lantica is kind of an offshoot where local filmmakers are making their own productions. So there's a lot of different perspectives and voices coming in, and so that was how we financed Boca Chica. And the film community and world there is just over a decade old. So there's a lot of people who have learned their craft very quickly, and they're incredibly talented at what they do.
And
they've been
scrappy
working on
too, like, and
Hollywood
having to
productions.
earn the stripes.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
I would say, like, I work as a production designer. I've been a wardrobe stylist. That's where still much of my income comes from. I would say, like, I've worked on so many indies here, mostly in New York State, one in the Bahamas, and it didn't feel any different to me in terms of like the amount of crew we had, the skill levels. There's obviously different kind of maybe
Permits or paperwork.
yeah, a little different, but even
Yeah.
that, like, something that I found really awesome, that not at least on the indie features I've been on this side, was that the casting team always had representatives on set. That might be a union thing, but like in any indie I've been on, there hasn't been like casting is on set. And like Valerie Hernandez Olofsson, who has her own company, who's an incredible talent in the DR and works with a lot of foreign productions as well. she has VHO casting, and so she always had representatives, which was great when we had a lot of child actors on set and extras, and so they were always handling that and helping the AD department with that. So that was awesome.
Wow.
I also felt like we had a bigger camera team or like the
Cool.
rental house we were renting from kind of came with their video sets. So I don't know.
Oh.
We like our project wasn't a micro budget film. It was 1.2. That was around the same amount that we were trying to raise for Leche in the States. It went a little further in the DR, but there are certain, like through the tax incentives, certain rates that are set for to protect crew members, and like if it's your first feature and things like that of that nature. So it kind of works like a union in that way to
Mm.
protect everyone's interests.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
slightly lower rates, but yeah, I felt like it was a very I felt protected. I felt like the respect was there all around, and yeah, I really enjoyed my experience as a
Wow.
director working with the casting crew there.
That sounds
Oh,
rad.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Is there another
Yeah.
place that's on your radar that you really want to?
I mean, I would love, I mean, I want to keep telling stories there. I think in the beginning, there's always this, I think as a first gen American or first gen anywhere, but I think
Mhm.
maybe immigrants here and like how diverse the United States and how young it is. There's this very specific experience for children of immigrants here. It's like you feel such a tie and pull to where your parents or grandparents came from and don't always feel American enough. And then you get there and you're like, oh, tú eres la gringa directora.
Yes.
And I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, soy una gringa. And that was not how
Mm.
I ever identified. Like, even in like my suburban, I'm like, oh, I have to be white to be a gringa. And it's like, no, you just have to be American.
Yeah.
And that, I like always struggled with my confidence around my Spanish, but I was like, you're gonna sink or swim. And so like I would love to continue fostering the relationships there. I would love to make a film in Guyana where my dad's from. Smaller country, English speaking, but different stories to be told. On his side, I'm South Asian, like from India, indentured servants
Mm.
came there, and Portuguese, but I'd like to talk a bit about the like Indo-Caribbean community that I just don't think is very well represented in cinema or storytelling in general, and speak to that history, the modern community, maybe a little bit of also even the past.
Yeah.
So that's somewhere like that I'd love to shoot, and potentially co-production could help with the UK. It used to be a Commonwealth. It would be of the interest of, the colonizers to help support. Spain actually funnels a lot of money into Iberoamerica and the like different films that are coming out of the region and support them later, which is, a little bit of something to give back at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I'm becoming increasingly aware of, is how government incentives help tell the kinds of stories I want to tell. Because it's really hard to cut through the Hollywood system. And as we saw this past year with the strikes, that's all, all the more like apparent.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I just see myself as an international storyteller, and that's what I want to keep telling. But I do want to tell, I have American stories I want to tell too, or stories at least that take place here. So yeah, it's a balance, but I'd love to continue traveling with the stories that I'm telling.
Oh, that's great.
What a beautiful answer. You
Yeah.
honestly answered like 4 of our questions
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
without us even asking. Because I was gonna ask like how your Latina identity kind of fuels your work, and you answered that so beautifully, because it's that sentiment of like being American and being from a Latin American country, not being enough for either, wanting to advocate for those stories, but not finding a place for it in your country of origin, and how it's so layered
Yeah.
and complicated. So that was great.
Yeah.
That was a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's hard, like once our like finding a place for our stories. I'm sure you can relate to this a bit, Natasha, is like sometimes, like, of course, you want the community to foster um, your work, and that's where it'll resonate the most, but you also want other people to have exposure to it. And sometimes you feel like you're being put in a box. And I have had such immense support, not only like that my first feature was made in the DI through the DA Cine, and have continued, like I went to Cannes this past year with the DA
Wow.
Cine, and they have accreditations that they're giving filmmakers. And it was a cohort, and so I got to meet a lot of people who I've known their work and have been watching, seek out Dominican cinema, because it's a golden era cinema, and there's some really beautiful stories
Yeah.
being told. But yeah, that's one side of things, but you also want to, like, widen out, and there's other stories in you that, like, yes, maybe I will want to cast a Latina in the role, but it's not maybe centered around identity in such an obvious way as something like Leche, that's literally about a young girl grieving leaving her homeland, and Santeria and all these things. There's other stories that are just about womanhood or other things, but I am a pretty, like, rooted about my roots. Like, one of my short films is called Rootless, about a pop star adopting a young girl, and that's a TV show I want to create. But that was an idea that kind of I was like, this could be about a Latina, this could be about an Indo-Caribbean woman. There's so much representation in that side of, like, Caribbean artists. She could be mixed. But I did think that people were going to see me, and they're going to want a certain thing from me that they've seen before. And that's something that I think is always a challenge, but it's also something that I'm already gravitating towards, telling these identity stories, like I mentioned, for those reasons. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I
Hmm.
love that. Just to learn a little bit more about you, was there a movie that kind of, or a TV show that kind of like just sparked your love for directing, but also filmmaking, because you do so much in the film world?
Yeah, I think Amelie was a big one that
Oh, that's so
one
good.
that I mentioned because I think it kind of combined for me so many things that are like, I or I double majored in journalism, and I always am like, oh, I had this side that I, like, want everything to be rooted in some reality. I want to hear people's stories and enjoy being, like, having them grounded. But I do, in all of my work, want some other, like, surreal or magical realism aspect, and I think that's why I gravitate towards coming of age stories so often, because children have such a unique and different perspective.
Same.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and so it gives you kind of that liberation. Yeah, for me, Ali was exciting because it was this love story about this very flawed and, like, very vulnerable young woman, but yeah, was told in a familiar place like Paris, but in a very unique way, and a world, like, the world building was so incredible and distinct, and Junet's work in general does that. And so for me, that was kind of like a gateway into, like, film can do all these things. Like, I love theater as well, and there's also so many crazy ways theater can play with perspective and sets and design, but film, there's certain things with music and color and cinematography that film encapsulated for me and really, like, opened my horizons. But I also, like, speaking to coming of age, I love John Hughes films. I loved there were so many just complicated and, like, going through just relatable like angsty things, the female protagonists of his films. And so those were, like, some of the earliest films that I was like, okay, these are things that I could get behind and that I really loved.
I was wondering if you could briefly walk us through, like, your process with, like, shot listing, storyboarding, like, what works for you, what have you found maybe really doesn't, you know?
And
Yeah.
if there's any apps that you use or anything?
Yeah, apps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, like, so starting out, because my background's I wouldn't say, I think I became a production designer. People gravitated. I always say it's because I had pink hair freshman year at NYU and people were like, do art. Are you interested
Yeah.
in art? And I did not know what a production designer did. I thought I'd be an editor because I was like rewriting and I knew I wanted to be a storyteller and I knew I wanted to write and direct, but I was a writer first and foremost. So yeah, I production design is so visual and I think I was already a very visual writer. Like I write the details and like the colors, it's like
The
the clothes in the
flavor.
room and all the
I
flavor.
love
Yeah, the
it.
sabor
Yeah.
is in my scripts. And sometimes people are like, that's for the director, you know, writers, it's a blueprint. But you know, I
Well,
disagree.
too
I
bad.
think
I'm gonna
Yeah,
spend
too bad.
that's like the
Yeah.
scripts I love the most, and why even as a director now that I read scripts as ODAs, I'm like, I need that flavor there. But yeah, so the first thing I would say I do when I'm really excited about an idea is create a mood board and start pulling images along with maybe like the synopsis. I used to be much worse at like outlining things, and it was interesting. Like this was my first time directing something I hadn't written, so it's a very different process. So for Boca Chica, it was in its treatment phase. Then I got a first draft. It also came together so quickly. I was like attached officially in like June after I pitched the project. Like I was loosely attached in February, but like we had a final draft in August and we were in prep in October and
Oh
shooting
wow.
Oh,
in
great.
November. So
Ready to
Nice.
rock.
we took our time in post though, but I was like, wow, after 7 years with one script and 3 with another, this is obviously what happens
Yeah.
with the first one. But I yeah, after the writing and breaking down process where I also went in, like we had the opportunity in August to go with the screenwriters to Boca Chica and talk through the script and like kind of see what in the community was inspiring what's on the page, because the writers are Venezuelan, Peruvian, hadn't been to Boca Chica, which is very like the script I had written in the DR was in Sosua, and I had been there and I had seen firsthand how sex tourism and the women of the communities were living in, spoken to them. They kind of were mirroring their own experiences and similar communities and what they knew, and obviously had done their research, but it was different. So like once we were there, we got to be like, this is what feels right. This is how we should adjust. This is what I'm responding
The
to.
details. Yeah.
Met some of the rappers in the community. My DP, Michaela Ruinga, she had worked with my producer before. She's an incredible Peruvian cinematographer. Learned a lot from her because she's also a veteran in the industry. And we, in prep, that was when we were first storyboarding. We had exchanged a lot of images. I tend to create also a playlist that kind of is the sonic
Do you leave
tone
it
and the
all
world.
on the computer?
Yeah, I share with my department heads. Depending, I've had shorts where I've like actors really responded to it and used it as a tool. For
Yeah.
this, that wasn't really the case. It was more of like a atmospheric department head resource. But yeah, I like to build a really like hefty visual deck out, and certain things are calling to production design, cinematography, obviously other things overlap. And then for this, I love this resource. I mean, this is more so for me and with my original scripts called Script Hop, that like now it's like this. I love this because it also, when you send your script out to people, you can kind of see who's read it and like who you need to follow up with, and who. This is just like a little, which people do that with their
you said you read
screeners too.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or like, you know that someone's not engaging with something and you're like, okay, they're busy or they're not about it and I shouldn't be wasting my time, but let me follow up and see. And but yeah, and that has like all of these different elements you can kind of hone in. It like breaks down the script for you, and then
Does it tell you how long people read it? Are they like, and they dropped
it
off at
tells
page
you if they
4?
downloaded it.
Downloaded it.
Because
All
it
right.
also can show if they opened the link. So that's
Okay.
like,
All right.
you don't know
Yeah.
after that, unlike
Yeah.
I guess some of the screener stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I
That's
just have
cool.
to trust from our conversation. But you
Yeah.
can like add your like ideal cast and things like that in prep.
Cool.
Like these are like development stuff when you're going out to your casting directors. but yeah, but I kind of piggybacked off of that, and the studio binder I used for the first time, which I like, and I don't know if there's other software. I'm sure there's other software like this, but I like that I'm not a huge storyboard person, and I think it's because I like working with kids and non-actors so much. I mean, for this, our lead it was her first film. Yes, I was working with veteran actors. In the other roles, I did have some non-actors and other child actors and supporting roles, but I I have a friend, Zach Cooperstein, who said something once that I always reference as like, there's DPs who light the frame and DPs who frame the light. And I don't think, that's a stark dichotomy, but there are people that's more of their essence, is they're more stylized and gravitate towards things where they have more control, and people who are like, let's just take the camera and move with it. And
Yeah.
that's their vibe and who they'd be better aligned with projects for. And Boca Chica, I think I wanted a bit more control over because I hadn't given birth to the script from inception. Yes, I shaped it. Yes, once we were on locations, there were things that I was like, we need this room, introducing different elements and restructuring a few things. But for me, I was like, I am executing something that is already existing, and I am adding my flavor to it. But I've also been hired. And so there's something here that somebody's in love with. And like, no matter what I would or wouldn't do, which like I fought for a lot of choices that I believed in, obviously, because I have to be, at the end of the day, I'm the captain of the ship, and
Right.
everyone's aligned. So if something's disconnecting with me in the story, I have to fight for what I think is best for the film. But in the storyboard process, it was for me with Mika translating the script, and I like doing that through references more than like then she would map out which I'm not exactly sure which software she is using for the floor plans, but she'll map it out for camera. And then sometimes, I mean, like most directors, I know some never throw out like what they have, but once rehearsal dictates so much. And this was also a new experience for me in that most of the films I write aren't ensemble cast pieces, and this has a very large family in it, and there's a wedding. And so for me, I was like, ooh, okay, this is a different sort of coverage than I've ever done before.
Yeah.
So
And
much
how-
blocking and
Yeah.
like
And my solution to it too, with like, we had a 22-day shooting schedule in DR and then 2 days in New York because the brothers in New York. And for me, it was like, whose perspective is this? What do I know best? Like, I really love telling things from the child's lens. And so I was like, this is Desi's story. For me, from the page, that's what I was like giving notes on. And so how do I keep going back? Like, I just want to keep going back to Desi and like make sure that for scenes, if we don't have time, or how we're shot listing and planning this, that she's the helm. And so it's okay if we're just like watching her like experience an argument between her aunt and her mother or something like that, or observing. Like, that is my solution, is always like, where's Desi and how is she feeling in this moment? And then yeah, what other information is really important. But for me, yeah, taking all of those stills that usually my resources are like shot deck and
Yeah.
frame set and film grab.
Yeah.
And sometimes obviously there's films that you just watch and they're not on any of those. So
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
but and you're pulling those yourself with an ad block or something, so you can do that. But yeah, so that's usually how I shot list, is kind of like, okay, scene by scene, here's the reference. And sometimes it's like, even if I've shot listed with the D, I'm like, this is the lighting and this is what I'm seeing as like the focus of it. But I really think our coverage is going to be answered in rehearsal. So it was also like figuring out, like, they're from Boca Chica, which regionally it's a very specific accent in the DR, and what's their economic class and things like that. And me, as not a native Spanish speaker, was never going to be the person offering that solution. I have my other strengths. So
Mm.
yeah, I mean, that's what filmmaking is, right? It's like leaning on the people who know better than you to make the story be as truthful and genuine and what it can be. So yeah,
Really
that
tapping into
was
that like
great.
collaborative spirit
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trying, you know, you hired these people for a
Yeah.
reason. Let them
Mhm.
feed you with the inspiration and the creativity that you need to make the project
100%.
better.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that I kind of like I do went off on some tangents there, but yeah,
No,
those
but it's
are
awesome
the
to
It's a lot of good
hear.
storyboarding
stuff. Yeah.
processes. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do like to not over plan because I want the actors to have space to breathe, but I also obviously want my DP to be prepared to light
Yeah.
for what we are doing. So yeah, those resources really help me have that jumping off point so that we can always revisit a frame or still or like if maybe it's just a song or painting to be like, this is what this
Yeah.
in essence is, and let's
Mm.
watch what they're gonna create here and what challenges we're gonna have. But yeah, and it worked well for this project. So
Oh, that's great.
I love that flexibility.
Yeah.
We're gonna switch gears if you're
Mhm.
down and
Mhm.
do
Let's go for it.
speed round.
Speed round. It's just questions, first thing that comes to your mind, throwing it out there,
Okay.
and then we move on.
And like we don't even know all the
Yeah.
questions, so
Yeah. We
bear
just
with
roll.
us.
We're just rolling.
Okay,
Let's do it.
great.
Yeah.
This
Let's
is
do it.
speed round. All right. If you weren't a filmmaker, what would you be?
I always say a neuroscientist or neurologist because I've had a lot of people in my life have traumatic brain injuries, and that is
Whoa.
what el timbre de tu voz. There's a character in that state. I don't know that I'd have the capacity for that. I double majored in journalism, so that's the other thing that I think of. But that's something that I come back to a lot personally.
Neuroscientist.
Yeah, something
Whoa.
studying the brain in that capacity.
Love it. Perfect.
I
If
love that.
if you had to tell someone about a secret talent or skill
Oh yeah.
or something crazy that you might be into that has nothing to do with film, what is it? What do you got?
No, I'm a marathoner. But people know that
Oh,
about me now because
yeah.
marathoners don't shut up about being marathoners.
Ah,
I am
It's
gonna
a flex. It's a
run.
flex.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna run London this year. I got injured right before Berlin, like was in Berlin and couldn't run it last year. I've only run one
Wow.
marathon, New York, but I run loads of halves now, and I'm part of a running community in New York.
Oh,
It's
hell
really
yeah.
dear to me, Goldfinger Track Club. So yeah,
That's it.
I
We're plugging the Goldfinger Track Club.
It's amazing.
yes,
That's it.
community.
Good.
It's like
That's it.
film. There's so many correspondences. So yeah.
Good.
Dream collaborations. It could be anything: cinematographer, producer, actor.
Yeah, someone, yeah.
I would love to work with like a veteran like Isabelle Hubert. She's such a legend. Mark Rylance comes to mind always. I think he's an incredible actor. I was looking up recently, I was like, he is almost EGOT. He doesn't have a Grammy, but like he's done it all and is like a sir. Love Rooney Mara, Paul Dano, Zendaya, Taylor. I think of actors a little more, but I also love discovering people and like working with non-actors. So it's hard for me to like think of a dream actor. And I think for me, like ideally in terms of producers, I think of like production companies for some reason because of their like ethos and the kinds of films they support. So like Neon, Mubi now is developing films. A24 obviously comes to mind. Yeah, and Kino, Film 4. Yeah.
Love all of
Love
those.
it.
Those are all great.
What have you been watching lately that you were inspired by?
I got
What are you binging?
lucky.
What are you binging?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always binging reality TV.
Love it. Love it.
It doesn't inspire me. It
Love
more
is blind.
yeah, Love
That's
is
all I'm
Blind,
saying.
Love Island.
Love
I like
Island.
have the Love Island group chat. I shut off my brain with TV, though I
You
do
have
really
to.
love The Curse, which weirdly is also about reality, like a form of reality
Oh,
TV.
that's right. Yeah, The Curse. You gotta check that out. Yep.
It's great. But I was lucky enough to have the screeners for the Independent Spirit Awards, and I've watched a few, but just yesterday I watched Four Daughters. And I'm now digging into her work. Kothur Benan is the name of the director from Tunisia, and it's this very like meta documentary that's about this mother recreating her trauma, which there's quite a few films around this, but it's so beautiful in terms of cinematography, but also the vulnerability of these like two of their sisters joined an extremist Islamic group, and it was like a very famous case and covered because the mother went and was talking about it on the news.
Oh,
And then her
wow.
two younger daughters that are still with her, and like them dealing with like what happened and how this like got to the point where they have no communication with the other two. Beautiful film. And I learned that she has these other two. She had this film that was nominated for Best Foreign Picture that I'd never heard of, so I want to check that out. Yeah,
Nice.
and Poor Things I saw recently and was one of my favorites, and really
Nice.
inspires me
Nice.
to think of like going back to those like Amelie roots of like making something just crazy, but with this like fierce female protagonist. Yeah. So
Awesome.
those are things that excite me.
And last one.
Last one.
What has to be on the crafty table?
Oh.
And what do you
Mm.
see on the crafty table when you give it that like, that thing? You know, no one's gonna eat it.
That's good.
Yeah, that's funny. Crafty. I always don't love pancakes and catering, but that's for
Oh,
I
okay,
like
you're
when I'm
allowed.
when I'm designing, I'm like always I never eat my breakfast. I'm putting coffee down everywhere and never drinking it. But I like fruit gummies a lot. Like
Welch's? Are we going Welch's?
I mean, that's
Okay,
what it
that's
always
okay.
is Welch's.
Yeah,
And
hell
so
yeah,
I'll choose
Costco.
Welch's. I do love Welch's.
Yep.
And then yeah, in terms of I'm not gonna touch it.
Yeah, you see it
That's
on
a
there and you're
hard
like,
one.
you know,
Yeah,
My
I don't.
my guilty one is if I see a bag of Doritos, fuck man, I'm
Yeah.
gonna eat them.
I'm gonna.
See, I do like chips.
Yeah.
I love
It's
chips.
All right.
I
good.
probably am not touching the vegetables, which is awful. Maybe because they're out and then they're in the air. I like a packaged item that I
Smart.
can
Yeah.
stick in my pocket. Carrots, I'm probably gonna forget. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Well, thank you for playing
Yeah, thank you for
speed
playing speed
round.
Of
round.
course. Thank
Yeah.
you all for playing with me.
Yay.
I
Yeah.
hope my answers were okay.
They
You're
were
awesome.
fantastic. Our next section we like
Yep.
to call nuggets
Yeah, it's a
because
little nugget.
we just wanna
Share tidbits and stuff that everybody learns along the way that they're like, oh, you know what?
Yeah.
If someone gave me nugget number 17, that might have saved me a
Yeah.
few headaches.
And just do away with the gatekeeping. Like
Yeah.
there's enough room for all of us.
Yeah.
Of course.
What tips do you have for emerging directors?
I would say, it's always hard, but I would say to spend time in the craft and maybe another role and on sets. I really
Yep.
found it valuable to be a production designer. I mean, I could have gone down a lot of different journeys, but I think, I mean, it could be post-production, it could be something else within the craft, but I think you learn what really works as a director and what doesn't, and it can only inform your process. And and so immersing yourself in that world is really important outside of like your own experience for different perspectives. So I would say that's a huge part of advice that I have, because it also helped me build the relationships that I then leaned on to get work made, or to become more visible as a filmmaker and to have space. And yeah, that's how you find your people who are going to champion the same sorts of stories. So just try and immerse yourself in the craft and put yourself in spaces where you would like to, where you see yourself seen, or like, and feel respected. Also in this industry, there's like a lack of boundaries, so don't put up with that either. I think it's something that, I'm continuing to learn and will continue to fight this entire time that I do this, but yeah, that's really important to creating a sustainable career.
Absolutely. Hell yeah.
Really great.
Yeah. I think it's so important to know what it's like to be a PA in
Yeah.
any and all the departments. Like you just see how it is from the ground up. And I
Yeah.
think it's so true. I think it's
You guys
valuable
did.
to earn your
Yeah.
stripes and like to have the time. And also you see the director talking to the different departments, or at least that liaison, and you see that kind of communication. And when it really works, you're like, oh, this director is directing the different departments. And to be able to see that from the inside out is, I think, really important. So 100%. Yeah.
And like knowing the language so that you can ask for what you want
Yeah.
more articulately.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Or know what not to do, because
Yes.
seen that where you're like,
Yes.
everyone is not responding well to this because of this.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are you working on right now,
Oh, yeah.
and where can we follow your
The
journey?
plug everything.
Yeah, I'm working on all the things.
All
I'm
the
working
things.
on I'm working on financing Leche, my baby first feature I've been working on since
Yeah.
2016. And also El Timbre de Tu Voz, that was on the Latina list this year, which I'm
Congrats.
returning to the
Congrats, yes.
island. Thank you. Returning to the island to shoot. We're going to shoot it this fall. Didn't get all the financing, so trying to get those two off the ground. Don't know what's going to be first. Working on a very personal film that takes place in New Orleans, finishing that script up, as well as a script that I'm collaborating with the producer of Boca Chica on, called False Cause, about a politician and an influencer adopting a girl, dark comedy. So that's exciting. We're taking Boca Chica out on the festival circuit. We've screened a few places domestically, but we premiered in the DR this spring. It's premiering at the end of the month at their global film festival. And then hoping
Awesome.
for some more world premieres with that and focusing on that. So yeah, and you can follow my work on my website, which is GabriellaAthenaMoses.com. 1A between Gabriella and Athena, and then my Instagram, which is Miss Mad Hatter 005, and
Nice.
Love it.
SS Mad Hatter. It's like an AOL login thing.
Yeah.
But it's because I like to wear hats. That's the origin
Okay.
there.
That's
Like
a
the
good
number
one.
5.
Hats are good,
And
man. Hats are good.
Change it and make it. Yeah, I wear many hats on set, so that works
There you
too.
go.
There
Wait,
you
so
go.
was that your AIM sign-in?
No, my AIM sign-in was much worse. So that this was
Yeah.
Mine is
That we leave in the coffins of our
Mine is
memory.
That's gonna,
That's-
you guys
yeah.
can add that to the fire round for the next filmmaker.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Oh, I love that.
Perfect.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. Do you have anything else to leave us with? Anything that we didn't ask you? Anything you want to say to young filmmakers or people who are watching?
I
Listening.
mean, just keep going. If there's a story in you, put it down on the page, find your people, and you never know what might happen. The journey isn't necessarily what you think it will be, and be open to that. Also, I guess something that's also really important is be intentional in the spaces that you want to, the kinds of stories you want to tell, and the spaces you want to be in, because people will try and steer your ship in another direction sometimes. And I think that's the strongest way to stay sane, is to continue loving what you're doing in this crazy industry. So yeah, that's my final words. And seek out global cinema, because it's incredible. So yeah.
And we'll plug everything and
all
share
of your links
everything,
and
and
everything.
anybody can
Awesome.
find this stuff. Yeah, hell yeah.
Gabriella,
Awesome.
keep on crushing it, because
Yes.
it's super inspiring to see what you're doing as a fellow Latina and just a woman in the industry. And just know that people are watching and you are inspiring, and just keep fucking crushing it.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you,
Yeah.
Natasha. Thank you, Seamus.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
And thank you for
appreciate you
taking the
taking
time.
Yes.
Same.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
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 And
we're
we're
back.
Yeah. It was
Um,
so fantastic to talk to Gabriella, and thank you,
Yeah.
Gabriella, for taking the time to speak with us and
Yeah,
share.
and just being so insightful and knowledgeable and sharing that knowledge with us and with hopefully all the people who are watching. That rounds out our director series, and we are also going on a short hiatus. So we're hoping that in that break you can catch up on older episodes, send us messages of anyone you'd like to talk to or any topics to cover.
Yep.
Yeah.
And please check us out on our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Yeah, Spouting Devil,
Devil
Out.
Podcast Out. And special side note,
Yeah.
if you saw that we were possibly distracted,
Yeah, oh my god.
we've introduced a new member to the family in this Spouting Devil team. His name is Mowgli.
Jungle Book.
And Jungle Book, and we are trying to train this little dude. And
And he's a devil.
And he is a devil incarnate, but the cutest in the world.
Say Spouting Devil Out, Mowgli.
Bye, Spouting Devil.